What's up, Navigating Academia family? I hope you guys are having an awesome week so far. This is your buddy and personal academic mentor, Dr. J. Phoenix Singh, your resident expert on everything related to getting into graduate school. Somebody who helps you to be able to polish all of your materials, to be able to make sure that you have a maximal chance of being able to get in, and this includes interview prep. Interview prep could not be more important than it is today. The odds of getting into graduate school have precipitously declined since the COVID-19 pandemic, and I can tell you right now that with so many applicants, you really have to stand out. And standing out doesn't just mean doing the right thing, it also means avoiding the most common mistakes that you will find. Today, though, we're not talking about the most common mistakes, we're talking about the most devastating mistakes that I personally have ever seen. There are so many interview videos here on this channel that I've made for you guys over the last several years, so please do make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Smash that like button to be able to make sure that as many people as possible can get helped. You guys know me, my goal is to be able to make success in academia as accessible as possible for as many people as possible. I'm a big believer in equal opportunity. I want to make sure that the best of you end up getting into graduate school, and what that means is that everybody should have an equal chance because they have an equal amount of knowledge of how the game is played. So many people, not just on YouTube but also just in life in general, when it comes to succeeding in academia, they kind of end up patting people on the head and saying, oh, you have a 100% chance of getting in, you have a 4.0 GPA, you have amazing test scores, you've got research experience, you've got practical experience, this means that you're a shoo-in, you'll get into at least one program. And then every single year I have people who apply to too many programs, they apply to 10 to 15 programs and they get 10 to 15 rejection letters, and they're incredibly upset and they just don't know what to do with their lives, and so they end up getting in touch with me. If that's you, or you just want to make sure that that does not become you, be sure to book a session with me down below. Let's make sure that you are absolutely prepared to the maximal level, okay? So let's go ahead and get into it today. The 5 biggest mistakes in grad school interviews that I personally have ever encountered, okay? So let's go ahead and get right into it. My notes are down here, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing, okay? Number 1. Oh my gosh, I still remember this day, guys. The person forgot that it was an interview for a master's program. They had applied, and some people want to do this. I myself applied for one master's program, even though I really wanted to get the doctorate, but I had one master's program that I was just so passionate about. I really loved the faculty members. They were amazing. I knew I was going to get so much amazing experience, and that the name of that program had so much cachet that it would max out my probability of getting into my target programs the following year. So worst comes to worst, I would still be in a great situation if I had the pleasure of getting into that program. And I did actually end up getting into that program as well, which is great. But obviously, when I was interviewed, I remembered that it was a master's program. If you end up applying to a whole bunch of different types of programs, I've had people this year apply, so like in the behavioral health sciences, they applied to a counseling program and also an MSW, so like a social work program, and then a PsyD program, and also a clinical psych PhD program, all 4. And it's one of these situations where that's really tough because your personal statement is going to need to read differently. The world of social work, the world of clinical psych, these worlds have different things that application panels or target supervisors are looking for in the way that you word things, in the jargon that you use, in terms of just the general perspective you're utilizing when you're developing your materials. It is different. Just because they're different types of programs, right, all within kind of that clinical realm, it doesn't mean that things are all the same. Okay, it's really important that people kind of take that into consideration, all right? But you have to, I mean, this is 101. Remember the nature of the program that you're applying to, right? And so what happened is that this person was applying for a master's program in clinical psychology, and they kept talking about, well, my goal is that when I complete the doctoral program here, I'll da-da-da-da-da-da. And so somebody in the room literally said, are you talking about applying for the doctoral program or the master's program? And she said, oh, well, of course, for the doctoral program. And literally, I remember 2 faculty members sitting across from me kind of like looking at each other, and you could just tell those 2 immediately, the second that was said, auto-reject, right? And this person, they passed triage, meaning that they had, a decent enough grades, decent enough test scores, but then, the likelihood that that's taken into consideration after that initial screening stage is like nil, right? And so it's just one of those situations where it's so simple. Remember the frickin' program, okay, number 1. Number 2, biggest mistake that I've seen is that, let's see, Heather's. Oh yes. So this is in the day and age of kind of remote interviews. So one of my interviews for like one of my all-time favorite programs for when I was applying many years ago, like almost 2 decades ago, right? We had phone interviews, right? As well as in-person interviews. It was a combination of both for me when I was applying. But these days, oftentimes things are kind of these remote video interviews, right? Zoom, WebEx, even Skype. I mean, you name it, right? And this was a couple of years ago now, like 2 years ago now, right? And literally, the person's significant other was just like wandering around in the background, right? And they were doing the thing. I'm assuming it was in their kitchen, right? But the person was just kind of wandering around. Be sure that if you end up having any kind of remote interview, that you watch the videos that I've made for you on this channel about the top tips for how you can make sure you come across really well and how you can set up your background, your lighting, and so forth. I give you guys guidance about your posture, your nonverbals, everything, the framing of the camera, all of it, ideal gear to be able to utilize, all these things I go over in other videos. Okay, so make sure that you watch those videos as well. But just make sure that if there's anybody else who's going to be in your space, okay, just let them know that they should stay out of frame. It seems so simple, that they shouldn't make noise, they shouldn't be cooking at the same time or using the microwave or anything like this, or let alone having obviously the TV on, or watching something on their phone. It's completely jarring to the interviewers, okay? So just don't do things like that, okay? But I just remember this person like constantly walking back and forth, and it really threw me as well as several of the other interviewers off. Don't do that. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3, okay, guys, this is something that is a really big one, but I do get it. But let me tell you guys, if you're in politics, one of the things that they teach is don't answer the question that's asked, answer the question that you want to answer, right? People can literally in an interview ask you anything, and then you could just like answer something different in politics, right? So if you have a question that you do not want to answer, you don't want to answer it, okay? You need to find a way to pivot rapidly, right? And answer something that ends up making you come across in a good light. I remember having somebody, and this was a huge, huge mistake for them, and honestly, I really liked the candidate, but they did get rejected. I felt really bad about it because I really fought for this person, right? But it was such a turnoff to so many people. They very hardcore just wanted to assert a boundary, and literally they said, I think that's an inappropriate question, I refuse to answer it. Right? And essentially what it had to do with is, like long-term plans. And I think that the person, however the question was framed, I believe that the person took the question, and I see how they could have taken it this way, by the way, about family planning, right? And basically you can't ask those questions as an interviewer, right? The way that the question was framed, I see how it could have been taken that way, right? But that's not how it was intended, I know for a fact, right? But perception is reality, right? But the person was like so hardcore, and like their whole mood changed and everything, and you could tell that maybe they had had somebody ask that in the past, or I don't know, I have no idea, guys, right? But it came across so bad, right? To just try to be very assertive and be like, that's an inappropriate question, I will not answer that question. And then there was like the most awkward period of silence. It wasn't a moment of silence. It was literally people, like the person who asked the question, like, making notes or whatever, then, like flipping through their little thing awkwardly and this kind of stuff. Not great. Not great. That was really bad. Number 4, biggest thing that I've seen, right? This one's really rough, guys, because you have to remember that, I've got 2 doctorates, and they were not done in the United States. I ended up being a faculty member in the U.S. at one Ivy League university, for example. But I can tell you guys that, it is one of these things where you need to make sure, like I'm in Spain right now, right? I'm living in Barcelona right now, and I can tell you guys that my Spanish sucks. It's basically non-existent, right? And I do go and give you lectures at the University of Barcelona here because I have wonderful colleagues there who want me to come and lecture on topics. But the thing is that my Spanish is nowhere good enough to the point where if I got interviewed by somebody in Spanish, are you kidding me? I could say like, La biblioteca en fuego. Like, the library is on fire. Like, that's, what I could say. Or, like, agua for water, and, sí and no, and these things. I can't do it, right? So there was one particular interview and I genuinely felt so bad about it because the individual was from a nation where the native language is not English, and this individual's English was really just not up to the level where they were able to verbally communicate. The written communication was sufficient to get them the interview, and you can tell, like, we just made the assumption afterwards that they had used some kind of a copy editor or translator to be able to help them, out, or even somebody to like write or develop their materials for them, because the level of English was such that it doesn't matter if the person's hard to understand. I'm really good with accents, right? So like I can totally understand. So that wasn't an issue for me. I know it was an issue for some other interviewers, but the biggest problem was that we would ask a question and the individual would misinterpret it and answer something like really kind of acknowledge the question, say that they understood it, and then answer something really, really, like, for example, one time I remember we asked a question which was a very open-ended question, and I still remember the individual just nodding their head very enthusiastically and saying, yes, yes. So that's not a pivot, like I said for the previous answer, right? That's not a pivot. That's just a total lack of comprehension of the question that's like being asked because of lingual, right, differences. So that's really rough. So make sure that, especially if you want to do a doctorate or you want to do a master's degree in a country where, the language that, especially you're going to be, writing in or being expected to like defend a thesis and these things are in that language, you just need to make sure that you've got that level of competence. It does need to be exceptionally high, okay? So that's number 4. And the final biggest mistake that I've seen is that the individual said, when we said, okay, so, tell us about your future plans and, okay, like what area do you want to go into and what do you want to explore, these sorts of things. And the individual said that they wanted to take some classes and all before making decisions. And they were like, well, this is what I really want to figure out in grad school, especially for doctoral programs. You can't do this, okay? And this was for a doctoral program. I suppose for a master's program, you can probably get away with that a little bit more easily, where you can say, like, well, right now what I'm really passionate about is this, and I really want to get more research experience, and, if this is the area that I am, indeed, I still am passionate about at the end, then I'm really interested in exploring a doctorate and such, right? But you can't just say, well, I'm not really sure. I know that I'm really passionate about this field, but I'm not quite sure what area, and so because of that, I just want to do the degree, take some classes, and then I'll kind of figure it out. Facepalm. No. That was really bad. That was like an auto-reject situation right there, okay? So guys, those are my 5 biggest mistakes that I have personally seen in grad school interviews. Please don't make those mistakes, and please make sure to be able to check out all of our other videos that I've put together for you guys over the last several years on the biggest mistakes and the best answers that you guys will, be able to come up with on how to be able to answer really challenging questions in grad school interviews, okay? So be sure, if you guys have further questions, comment down below, and make sure that you also book a session with me so that we can kind of one-on-one go over everything together that's really tailored for you and your unique situation. And you can do that via the website below, which is www.jphoenixing.com. All right, guys, God bless. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.